Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really unique homeopathic remedy. This is one that's said to address the very beginning and the very end of a human life. We're going to build a complete picture of Baryta Carb and see how it bridges the gap between childhood and old age in a way that's, well, it's pretty fascinating.
So let's start off with a bit of a puzzle. What on earth could possibly connect a super shy, slow-to-develop kid with a forgetful, physically frail older adult? They seem like total opposites, right? A complete paradox. But the answer to that question, that's the key to understanding the very heart of the remedy we're exploring today.
So to piece this all together, here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into its core theme, this idea of life's extremes. Then, we'll paint a really vivid picture of the Baryta Carb personality. After that, we'll see how that shows up physically, and then we'll bring it all back together with the most important takeaways and, some really critical cautions.
All right, let's jump right into the most captivating idea behind this remedy. The sources call it the first and second childhood remedy. Honestly, if you can grasp this one concept, it's the absolute key to unlocking everything else about Baryta Carbonica.
So what is Baryta Carb exactly? Well, it's a remedy that's prepared from barium carbonate, and across all the materia, its central undeniable theme is immaturity. Now that could mean a child who's just slow to hit this developmental milestones, or it could describe an elderly person whose mind and body are declining into a state that, well, it looks an awful lot like a second childhood. Okay, so we've got this powerful idea of immaturity. But what does that actually look like in a person? To really get a feel for this remedy, we need to move beyond just the concept and create a clear mental and emotional portrait of who we're talking about. This quote from one of our sources really just cuts right to the chase. The personality here is marked by this really deep-seated lack of confidence, and that makes them timid, shy, and, very easily swayed by what everyone else around them thinks and does. And this lack of confidence is profound. It's not just a little shyness. It often leads to a deep, deep sense of dependency on other people. We see a slowness to grasp new ideas, and maybe a weak memory for what's been learned. The classic, almost iconic image described in multiple sources is that child who literally hides behind their mother's legs when a stranger comes over, maybe peeking out nervously. And it's more than just being bashful. It often comes from this deep, almost paralyzing feeling that they're constantly being watched or judged or even laughed at.
And this mental picture, it's perfectly mirrored in their physical and cognitive development. The sources say over and over again that children who might need this remedy can be slow to learn to walk, to talk, to read, even to get a handle on simple ideas. It's almost like their whole system is just running on a delay.
So, now that we have this clear mental portrait, the next question is pretty obvious. How does this theme of immaturity, or on the flip side, degeneration, actually show up in the body? Well, according to our sources, the answer points to two key areas, the glands and the blood vessels.
Taking a look at the physical side of things, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. In the glandular system, Baryta Carb is famous for its connection to recurrent tonsillitis, hard swollen tonsils, and other swollen glands in the neck. For older men, this same tendency can show up as an enlarged prostate. Then, if we shift over to the cardiovascular system, we start seeing conditions tied to aging and degeneration, things like hardening of the arteries, high blood pressure, even aneurysms. And finally, the nervous system links right back to our mental picture, with things like forgetfulness and dementia.
And if there is one single physical note that just echoes through all the literature, it is absolutely this one. The person who needs Baryta Carb is often described as chilly, meaning they catch a cold from the slightest draft or exposure. And almost every time, that cold goes straight to their throat, resulting in those painful, swollen tonsils and glands we just talked about. It's a real hallmark of the remedy.
Okay, so we've seen the mental picture of immaturity and the physical picture of glandular and vessel issues. Now let's put it all together. Let's see how these two sides of the same coin play out at the opposite ends of life. This is where our whole story really comes full circle.
Just look at the parallels here. It's actually remarkable. In the child, you see underdevelopment, slow learning, that crippling shyness, and often a physically small or underdeveloped stature. Then you look at the elder, and you see a degeneration that mirrors this almost perfectly. Childish behavior, memory loss, and growing physical weakness. Even the glandular swelling in the kid with tonsillitis is echoed by something like an enlarged prostate in old age. It really is the same pattern, just playing out at opposite ends of a lifetime.
This quote really captures that second childhood idea perfectly. It highlights conditions in the elderly that come with this sort of regression to a more childlike state, both in their mind and in their body. It's the exact inverse of the delayed development we see in the young patient. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground building this portrait. So let's just boil it all down to the most important points to remember, and we'll finish up with a crucial word of caution that you absolutely need to hear. So if you take anything away from this, remember these 4 things. 1. The core theme is the 2 extremes of life, arrested development and old age decline. 2. The mental picture is all about that deep shyness, dependence, and feeling of inadequacy. 3. The physical picture focuses on the glands, especially the tonsils and the vascular system in the elderly. And 4. The general profile is someone who feels the cold and gets sick easily because of it.
And finally, this is the most critical takeaway of all. I'm not kidding. Nearly every single source we looked at makes this point and makes it emphatically, especially when you're dealing with serious chronic conditions that affect the heart or cognitive function in older people. Self-medicating is just a bad idea. You should always seek the advice of a qualified professional. So we'll end on a final thought. We've just built this whole portrait, right? We've connected a mental state like shyness to a physical problem like tonsillitis, and we've linked developmental delays to the challenges of getting older. So what is this method of creating a holistic patient picture instead of just treating one isolated disease tell us about the fundamental philosophy of this system of medicine? That's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer.